Department said that Norfolk Southern estimates it will spend more than $1 billion on contamination cleanup and mitigating other potential harms, along with proving rail safety, okay, and operations. This is the DOJ and EPA in May announced a $310 million settlement with Norfolk Southern in the derailment. Now, along with a $15 million civil penalty, the settlement will require Norfolk Southern to pay for past and future cleanup costs, enhanced rail safety and health monitoring. Now, it also says Norfolk Southern likewise agreed to a $600 million class action settlement to resolve claims surrounding last year's train derailment. But now some East Palestine residents find themselves hesitant to sign on, and I can't blame them. I can't blame them. And yet again, they have a quote from Julianne Bear that says, "I think we should be concerned," okay? And she is a vinyl chloride expert, okay? Citing the likelihood of long-term environmental impacts on states and communities. Now, in ABC News, they have also, of course, about this, and it says, let's see, following the derailment, Dr. Aaron Haynes, chair of the University of Kentucky's Department of Epidemiology and Environmental Health, surveyed approximately 400 adults in the East Palestine area around their health effects after the accident. Now, Haynes found that 3 out of 4 residents suffered health impacts after the derailment, and over half of the residents reported their conditions continued through the fall of 2023. Okay, so here are some of the things that they reported: nose and eye irritation, coughing and wheezing, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, rashes, and just feeling very fatigued. Lethargic, weak, tired were among the symptoms reported according to Haynes. Then they speak of that particular settlement that in April 2024, Norfolk Southern agreed to a $600 million settlement to resolve a class action lawsuit related to the train derailment. Now, on News Nation, it says the controlled burn was unnecessary. Wow, okay. In March, a National Transportation Safety Board chair, Jennifer Hamdi, testified before the Senate that the controlled burn and explosion set off in the wake of the derailment could have been avoided. Several pieces of necessary information were not shared with state and local leaders, who decided to vent and burn 5 tank cars after being advised by Norfolk Southern contractors at the scene of the crash that it was their only option. There's quoted to saying, by her, they were provided incomplete information to make a decision. An investigation by the NTSB found that Governor Mike DeWine, East Palestine Fire Chief Keith Drabick, and several other officials were told they had minutes to decide whether to vent the train cars or wait and risk an uncontrolled explosion. Now, it goes on to quote Jennifer Hamdi of the National Transportation Safety Board chair, that's her. There was another option, she said. Let it cool down. Wow. The NTSB later showed the threat of explosion was diminished and that the tank cars were actually cooling when they decided to actually do this controlled burn. I didn't know that. Now they have like a picture, and it says residents plagued with health issues, and it shows a young lady, and she has a really bad rash on her neck, her chest, and her face. When East Palestine resident Kathleen and her boyfriend Chris went back home, she broke out in a rash all over her face. It looks like it's on her neck and her chest. It's very close to her eyes too. Oh my God. It says initial EPA, okay, and Norfolk Southern testing done at the derailment site showed the presence of dioxins, which are the most carcinogenic compounds on the planet Earth. Wow. But the officials did not test any of the residents' health. What? Independent testers who visited East Palestine examined the environment and the people. Some tested the soil, others tested the water in local creeks and air filters in homes around the derailment site. Now, I do remember residents on their own phones and posting things, and you could see things on top of the water that you can tell it was heavily chemicals. It wasn't, oh my God, it was like, the independent testing has shown evidence of toxins in the soil, the air, and the water. Residents have been diagnosed with the presence of vinyl chloride in their blood and complained of respiratory issues. Wow. It says the NTSB is expected to hold its final hearing on the derailment next week. All right, so I'm going to end this episode with, or this segment with Newsweek. It said maps reveal pollution fallout from Ohio train derailment, and they talk about the 16 states. It says over a year after a train derailed in a small Ohio town, spilling a cocktail of toxic chemicals into the environment, scientists have mapped just how far these pollutants traveled. Now in theirs they said, they basically give the timeline of when it started. The East Palestine, Ohio train derailment on February 3rd, 2023 involved a Norfolk Southern freight train carrying a variety of hazardous materials. At approximately 8:55 p.m., 38 of the train's cars derailed. The derailed cars included those carrying, of course, vinyl chloride, benzene, among other hazardous substances which were released into the environment after the incident. Now I didn't know this. It says, not this part, a controlled burn of many of the chemicals was performed afterward to prevent an explosion, setting up a plume of black smoke. The smoke may have contained a number of other hazardous chemicals, of course, because that was what was in these 38 cars that derailed, okay? It says, including phosphine gas. Now, what is phosphine gas? It is a chemical weapon that was used in World War I, which forms when vinyl chloride is burned. Wow. So along with all of these hazardous chemicals, you have something that is actually was used as a chemical weapon in the First World War. Now, there is no way, in my opinion, that no one knew, no one suspected. There is no way. And all of a sudden, the studies show this. Yeah, okay. No, there's no way. There's no way. You have 38 cars that derailed, and all of them are containing highly hazardous chemicals. And then on top of what we learned from the previous article from News Nation, from an expert saying that they had another option to let it cool, and it already was cooling. Oh my God. You were just listening to Teachable Moments with April podcast. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode.